And now we are going to start to get busy with our Bible study. And so, if you want to turn to Ecclesiastes chapter 10, and verse number 10 is where we left off. Ecclesiastes chapter 10 and verse number 10. And by the way, Olga, I think your cat is a lot quieter than my dog. Can you guys hear that? I don't know if you could hear that or not, but when we were praying, she was really barking out there. Something tells me that that is not going to be the first time tonight. Okay? All right. So let's see what we're in tonight. We are in Ecclesiastes chapter 10 and verse number 10. And I'll transition over here. This is on page number 32, right at the bottom of that page. And by the way, what we were looking at last week is we came to this section of, first of all, Solomon started to talk about wisdom, and he started to talk a little bit about the benefits and the advantages that wisdom had. And then starting into chapter 10 of Ecclesiastes, we start to get a set of proverbs that is going to go all the way through chapter 11. Now, a little bit of a reminder what we talked about last week about what a proverb is. A proverb is going to be a short, witty saying that is going to convey a truth. When you're talking about biblical proverbs, these are proverbs that are inspired by God, and so they are conveying just practical, everyday truths and wisdom. But the advantage is that these, because they come from God, these are perfect. You know, when we look at just simply our everyday proverbs that we have, there's going to be some limitations and faults to it because they come from us. But these proverbs, since they come from God, when we properly understand them, they are going to go a little bit further because of their perfection. And not only that, a lot of these proverbs have spiritual dimensions to them as well. And so, you know, I really love the book of Proverbs, and I love studying these. Now, one thing that you might notice when you come across these proverbs and other proverbs in the book of Proverbs is that a lot of times when you look at the Bible, you're talking about something that, you know, you always have to keep it in context. Every single verse is attached to verses that precede it and verses that follow it. And all of those verses go together to form thoughts, to form paragraphs, to form chapters, to form books. And then even the individual books have got to be taken in its context within the whole framework of the Bible. And so the Bible is just layer after layer after layer of context. And we've always got to understand that. However, when you talk about Proverbs, sometimes one proverb, one verse, really doesn't have a whole lot to do with another proverb that's in the next verse. Now, a lot of the proverbs that we're looking at tonight do have something in common with one another as far as subject matter, and we're going to look at a little bit how sometimes these proverbs extend over several different verses. But anyway, that's kind of a little bit about what a proverb is, okay? All right, so taking a look at our verse number 10, and in verse number 10 of chapter 10, you notice that it says this. It says, if the axe is dull and its edge unsharpened, more strength is needed, but skill will bring success. Okay? So the first question here, and I'm just going to go ahead and kind of answer it, and that is, how does the condition of the axe affect the quality of the work? How does that relate to skill, and how does that relate to wisdom? Now, here it is, and that is that the hint is that when you look at this and you read there at the bottom of verse number 10, where it says, but skill will bring success. That word skill is the same word that is translated as wisdom, okay? And, you know, we oftentimes think of wisdom as being an intellectual exercise. You know, that wisdom has something to do with somebody's intellect and somebody trying to figure things out. That's kind of the Greek philosopher view of things. But in the Old Testament, wisdom really didn't mean that to a large degree. Instead, wisdom really had to do with skill in skillful living. And so here where it says that, and there's a comparison here between an axe that is dull and its edge isn't sharp, it's unsharpened, that there's going to be a lot of strength that is required to do the work. And I'm sure that, if you've had an opportunity to chop wood in your life, you would rather chop wood with a sharp axe over a dull axe. If you haven't ever chopped wood, well, maybe you could, apply that to different things. You could say, all right, if you have a saw, it's better to work with a sharp saw than it is a dull saw, especially if it's a hand saw. If it's a dull hand saw, it's going to require a whole lot more strength. And if you're thinking, I've never even done anything like that before, well, you can even, take it from wood to paper and an axe to a saw to scissors. If you've ever been cutting a lot of paper before, it's a whole lot easier to cut with sharp scissors rather than dull scissors, right? Okay, because when you got something dull, you've got to have a whole lot more strength and a whole lot more work attached to it. When you have something that's sharp, that tool is much more efficient, and so therefore your work is going to be a whole lot easier. And so there at the end of verse number 10, it says, but skill will bring success, or wisdom will bring success. You can kind of see where he's getting at here, and that is that when we're in our life, our everyday life under the sun, and we have wisdom about us, especially if it's God's wisdom, then we're going to go through life a whole lot easier and a whole lot more efficiently than we would be if we were going through life with not using wisdom, not having any skill about us. Okay? All right. So kind of going back to this question here, and that is, how does that relate to skill? How does that relate to wisdom? Well, I guess I just answered all of that in there for you, but with a lot of skill, with a lot of wisdom, you can go a long way. And like I said last week, there's a lot of times today that our society really doesn't use wisdom and doesn't value wisdom a whole lot these days. We're much more of an emotionally based thinking and emotionally based reacting about things instead of thinking things through and thinking, okay, what is going to be the best way to tackle this, best way to handle it, especially the best way that we can handle ourselves as well. Okay? All right, so we're going to go and we're going to move on to page number 33. And, hi, Esmeralda. I'm glad that you are here too. Boy, it's been a long time since I've seen you, but I'm glad you're here tonight. All right. And Gary, it's nice to have you here, and thank you for recognizing my dog Twix. Did you hear her barking? Like I said, it's not going to be the last time. And who else am I missing here? Oh, and Carol, glad you were here, Carol. Carol, I never see you in here. I don't know why, but glad that you were here as well. Okay, so now we're in Ecclesiastes chapter 10 and verse number 11. On page number 33, okay? Ecclesiastes chapter 10, verse number 11, and then going on to page number 33, okay? All right, so looking at verse number 11, it says this, if a snake bites before it is charmed, there is no profit for the charmer. That's an interesting one, isn't it? If the snake bites before it's charmed, there is no profit for the charmer. When you look at Proverbs, there's like the basic level of understanding. It's like, oh, okay, where you take things literally. But then when you start to look at what its meaning is and you start to apply it, then you can start to broaden out into different meanings of it. So, obviously the very basic literal meaning of it is you got somebody who's a snake charmer, right? And if somebody's going to be charming a snake and then they go and they don't use wisdom, of course I don't know how wise it would be to be charming a snake anyway, right? But in their pursuit, their craft of charming a snake, they don't have that skill, and because of that, the snake jumps up and bites them. And so if the snake bites before the charmer charms it, then therefore there's no there's no benefit, there's no profit to the charmer. Okay, so taking a look at our question here. Our question is, thinking back to risk, does the amount of risk involved in our pursuits sometimes outweigh the reward? If so, why do we bother doing it? Now, this kind of goes back a little bit to what we looked at in verse number 9 about whoever quarries stones may be injured by them, whoever splits logs may be endangered by them. And then, what we talked about at that time was that, there is an inherent risk of doing things in life. I mean, regardless of what you do, if you want to just simply sit back in life and not do anything because you're too afraid of the risk that's involved, then you're not going to be engaged in life. And as a matter of fact, doing that's going to have long-term negative impacts right there. And so, to be involved in life, whether it's just getting out and going to a job, and driving your car to it, there is a certain amount of risk there. If you're going to work, there is a certain amount of risk there. Life always carries a certain amount of risk, but to live life, we've always got to have that risk. So now we go over to this, and then just simply thinking back to risk. Does the amount of risk involved in our pursuits sometimes outweigh the reward? Like the snake charmer, especially if he really doesn't know how to charm a snake. If he is a newbie at it, if he just got on the internet and started to read, snake charming for dummies. 10 quick tips on how to be a snake charmer. Let me see. Oh yeah, I think I can do this. Let me see. Where's the snake? And then he goes and he gets bit. There's not going to be any benefit for them there, right? And so when we look at the things that we are doing of life under the sun, we need to kind of sit back sometimes and understand that we're in a couple of different places. And that is that, number one, we're in a place that there is life, risk inherently involved with life. But at the same time, in doing what we do, we need to have skill attached with what we do so that we can work wisely in life. But at the same time, in that process of skill, we need to understand if we don't do things with wisdom, if we don't do things with skill, then we may be getting so much risk involved that it really is not to the profit, the advantage of what we do. Okay? So if you look at that, verse 9, 10, and 11, those are actually 3 separate proverbs, but at the same time, the subject matter just kind of ties them all together, right? Okay. Anybody got any questions or comments about that is in the comment section here? Oh, by the way, hi Nancy. Glad that you're here with us tonight too. Okay.
Eileen Williams.
And Eileen. Wow. Eileen, hey, it's good that you're here with us tonight. And I guess that's all that's so far. So, all right. Well, we're going to move on to Ecclesiastes chapter 10, verses 12 through 14. Okay. Ecclesiastes chapter 10, verses 12 through 14. So, in verse number 12, it says this: words from a wise man's mouth are gracious, but a fool is consumed by his own lips. At the beginning, his words are folly. At the end, they are wicked madness. And the fool multiplies words. No one knows what is coming. Who can tell him what will come after him? Okay, so here's the situation. We've got 3 verses here that are all connected together. And so this isn't this isn't 3 different proverbs, even though they're 3 different verses. It's just one proverb that is all tied together. All right. And when we look at this, and looking back at our question here, it says, what is the contrast between a wise man's word and what happens with a fool's lips? And so when we look back here in verse number 12, it says, words from a wise man's mouth are gracious. And so if you think about this idea about having skill in what we do, a lot of skill in what we do is involving on the things that we say. A lot of times we think of skill as being the things that we do in life, and we don't really stop and think about the words that we are using. But I tell you something, words are a whole lot more dangerous, I guess you could say, than our actions, or powerful. I mean, the old adage is sticks and stones can break my bones, but words will never harm me. See, there's a proverb right there that is a non-inspired proverb, and it doesn't really go that far, does it? When we look at the power of words, words really do have a lot of power to them. And so when we think about somebody who's going to be wise, and somebody who's going to have a lot of skill in their life, they're going to be saying things that are going to be very gracious about things. They're going to be saying things that in the book of Ephesians are going to be building people up, not tearing people down. They're going to be, looking back in the book of Proverbs, they're going to be apples of gold in settings of silver. They're going to be, and a wise person has just the right words to say in just the right situation. Boy, I wish I could be like that, right? Okay, so there's the wise words, but in contrast to that, what we see is what happens with a fool's lips. And so that's what's happening with the fool's lips right there, okay? She's got it going, doesn't she? Okay, but what happens with the fool's lips? Well, it says this, and that is that a fool is consumed by his own lips. And so if you think about, in contrast to a gracious, wise man who is being gracious with their words, a fool is going to be one who is going to be just like eating up their lips. I mean, they're talking so much foolishness. They're talking so fast. They're talking so empty. They're talking so vain. They're talking so wrong. They're talking so wickedly. They're talking with such lies and deceit. However you want to spin that with foolish words, it's just like all of that corruption and filth is just, eating everything up and eating up their own lips. Now, looking at verse number 13 kind of gives a little bit more to that point. And that is, at the beginning his words are folly, and at the end they are multiple or wicked madness, and the fool multiplies words. And so just this growing idea about deception and filth and corruption and foolishness that's going to be coming out of his mouth. It's going to start off small, and it's just going to be growing and growing and growing and growing into where it's just consuming the whole situation. And so kind of taking a look back at our questions here, and that is, does the focus of someone's speech reveal their character? Does the focus of someone's speech reveal their character? Okay, and even more to that is what's going to follow it up, and that is, should we ever expect what a fool says, to ever get better? Okay, now let's talk about that first subject there, and that is, does the focus of someone's speech reveal their character? What do you think? Have you ever met somebody that you could pretty much, and I'm not talking about judging somebody, but I'm talking about just simply, getting an assessment about who somebody really is? How many times have you been able to get an assessment from somebody because they come in just spouting off nonsense? They come in spouting off lies. They come in with vulgarity, everything like that. Have you ever known anybody like that? There's sometimes that somebody will come in and they'll start to spout off things that are just complete and utter nonsense, to the point that within just a few minutes, I'm thinking, wow, I don't really want to get this person's advice on things. This person is just kind of listening to what they say, listening to their approach on life, listening to their spiritual quality and character. Sometimes you just get the point about, kind of their speech is really revealing who they are deep down. And, I think that a lot of times we need to understand that, our speech does really reveal our character, whether we're, being wise or being foolish. And, should we ever expect what a fool says to ever get better? Well, kind of looking at this, I don't know. I mean, when I look at this, I see not, at the beginning, his words are folly, and at the end they're just wicked madness. That shows to me that it's just getting worse and worse and worse. It's not going to be getting better. It's not going to be getting better because there's no wisdom that's attached to it. Wisdom is going to be making that better. All right, let's see what kind of comment we have here. I've heard we've got a comment. Saw that we got a comment. Hey, that's a good thing. Marianne, yes, and they can be hurtful. Marianne, I think that you're going way back to the beginning with about what happens, or what is the contrast between wise man's words and what happens with a fool's lips. The words can be hurtful. So thank you for that wise comment, by the way. It may not have come out of your lips, but it came off of your fingers, right? Or if you're texting with thumbs. Okay. I've got my gallery over here. That's they're like, okay, that's dumb dad joke. Dumb dad joke.
Was that not a joke?
I meant for it to be a joke. I meant for it to be a joke. Okay. Now, moving on to the last little part of that here. Okay, and that is this: does it do any good to argue with a fool? Okay. Does it do any good to argue with a fool? That last little part there, and verse number 14. No one knows what is coming. Who can tell him what will happen after him? All right. Okay. Oh, Carol, their speech can sometimes reveal if they're trustworthy. You're absolutely right. Just like the fool's speech will reveal their foolishness, a wise person's speech is going to be revealing wisdom too. And so, if you go and by the way, if you're ever dealing with somebody and you notice that they are a liar, what would make you trust them? In anything else you say, you're dealing with a salesperson, for example, and you realize that the salesperson is lying to you. I don't trust anything else that they'll say, because if they're going to lie to you once, then they're going to keep on doing it, right? But at the same time, if you find somebody that is trustworthy, that is going to be honest with you, that's going to be direct with you, that's going to be using wisdom in that regard, then that's somebody that I like to keep going back to, right? Okay. All right. So does it do any good to argue with a fool? The answer to that is no, it doesn't. And the reason for it is it's because they're foolish. A wise man is going to listen to advice. A wise man is going to be one that realizes his own foolishness. And so therefore he's going to be thinking, I need more wisdom. He's going to be one that isn't proud, isn't arrogant. He's going to be thinking that and understanding that he doesn't know anything. And so therefore, when there is advice to be given, advice to be heard, he's going to be listening to that. And, there's that with wisdom. On the fool, on the other hand, if you think about what an argument is, an argument is really never a quest for wisdom. It's really not very much a quest for understanding. Usually an argument is an opportunity for somebody to prove somebody else wrong. Okay? And so when you have somebody who is locked into that mode of thinking of, I am here to prove you wrong, I'm here to prove myself right, and there is a fight that's there, there really isn't a point in continuing that, okay? All right, because chances are you're not going to win. I think the old saying is, never argue with a fool, because he's going to pull you down to his level and beat you with experience. Okay. All right. Okay. Moving on to verse number 15. Okay. Verse number 15. In verse number 15, it says this. A fool's work wearies him. He does not know the way to town. I love that one. Okay. A fool's work wearies him. He does not know the way to town. And so, if you think about a fool who really doesn't want to do work to begin with, because he's a fool, he really is going to be using a lot of different excuses, isn't he? And so, if a fool is there and he needs to go to town to do something, and you say, hey, go to town, do this, they're going to be looking for excuses. They're going to be like, I don't know the way, right? Okay. Why don't you figure out the way and then go to town? All right. Well, I never thought about that. But the reason why they didn't think about that is because they don't want to do it to begin with. All right. Okay. So taking a look back at our questions here. I think I've already answered. Why doesn't a fool bother learning the way to town? Okay. Answer is because he doesn't want to. And I think that that's one thing that we can an application that we can make from it is that a lot of times when we are in this life under the sun and we are asked, requested, we're put in positions that we need to do things and do certain tasks. There's sometimes that we need to go and overcome obstacles to do that task. And so, like, for example, the fool that needs to go to town to do something, he doesn't know the way to town. And so what does he need to do? He needs to overcome that obstacle by learning the way to town, right? There's times that they just don't want to do it. And they don't want to do it because, A, they're too lazy, B, they're not motivated. The list goes on and on and on. I've heard it a lot before dealing with middle school students, right? Okay. It's just been there, done that. Okay. How about this? When we are not motivated to do a job, do we ever find reasons or excuses to avoid it? Procrastination. I admit, I'm guilty. I've been there, I've done that, and that is that if I'm not motivated to do something, then chances are subconsciously I'm probably looking for a way to not do it. Why? It's because I just don't want to. All right?
Are you currently doing that?
Has anybody been in such a situation like that? My gallery does not need to point out my own faults.
I'm not doing anything.
Can you imagine? You probably didn't hear that, but I heard something over there. This little mousy voice about, are you doing that now? I'm doing my Bible study now.
That.
Yeah,
I'm not procrastinating anything now.
Not at this exact moment, no. No, not at this exact moment. Do I have a comment to bail me out here?
No.
Oh, no. I was hoping I was going to have a comment to bail me out of this sticky situation. But I tell you what, thinking back to, middle school kids and stuff, I tell you what, just, all through my school experience, the hardest thing that I'd ever do was when I was not motivated in a class. Have you ever been there? That was the hard. I could guarantee you I wouldn't get a good grade in class if I was not motivated about the material. If I was motivated about the material, I'd get a good grade. But if I was not motivated for the material, then it was really hard for me to get a good grade, and consequently, I didn't get good grades in middle school. So. But a lot of times that's the way it is that, if we're motivated to do something, we're going to find ways to do it. If we're not motivated to do it, then we're going to find excuses. If we're going to be in our wise self, not our foolish self, but if we're going to be on our wise self, what we're going to do is we're going to realize that, right? We're going to realize that this isn't something that we are very motivated to do in and of ourselves. But what we're going to do is we're going to stop and we're going to think, is this something that we really need to do? There's sometimes that we really don't need to do it. Shannon asked me to go and do something that really doesn't need to be done. I might find an excuse not to do it. Oh, I'm getting myself in more trouble now. But, there's sometimes that you need to stop and think, hey, you know what? I really need to do this. And because I really need to do this, what I need to do is I need to find some sort of external motivation to overcome these obstacles, because there's always going to be obstacles and no matter what we do in life. Okay. All right. Moving on. Do we have any comments now, please, to help bail me out? You guys aren't helping bail me out. Okay. All right. So we're going to go on. We're going to take a look at the next one, which is verse number 16 and verse number 17. All right. So in verse number 16, let me flip my page here. All right. Oh, we do have a comment. Okay. Marianne, I have that now. I just don't want to do it. Okay. That's right. Oh, all right. Well, Olga, you're right. Examples. We don't want to pray sometimes, and that actually is a good example. And that is that sometimes in our sinful state, we dishes.
You have great church members bailing you out that fast.
All right, thank you very much.
5 comments in a row.
I know who's got my back now, Marianne and Olga. Okay, but Olga, going back to your comment, and that is, that is an example right there of foolishness versus wisdom. That foolish, sinful side of us, a lot of times will not be motivated to do spiritual things like pray, like study our Bibles, so on and so forth. And that's where we need to step into our spiritual wise side of things and say, you know what, even though I don't want to do this, I need to do this. And so, we just like the fool, he doesn't know the way to town, but he could ask and find a way to get there, right? That's where we need to say, hey, you know what, I don't need to be a fool. I need to be wise, and I need to figure out a way to make time for this. All right? Okay. Marianne, dishes, I don't want to do them either. Okay, moving on to verse number 16. Okay, in verse number 16, it says this: Woe to you, O land, whose king was a servant, whose princes feast in the morning. Blessed are you, O land, whose king is of noble birth, whose princes eat at a proper time, for strength and not for drunkenness. And so here we've got a proverb that is going to be 2 verses. Both of these 2 verses go together, and they are this proverb. It's one proverb spanning 2 different verses. Okay, so what are we talking about here? Are we talking about there in verse number 16 about woe to you, O land, whose king was a servant, and then verse number 17, blessed are you, O land, whose king is of noble birth? Are we trying to say that the kings that were of noble birth were going to be the great kings? The kings that were of not so noble birth were not going to be great kings? Is that what Solomon was trying to say in this verse? No, because if we go back to chapter 4 and verse number 14 or 13, chapter 4 and verse 13, I'm going to say this right. Chapter 4 and verse number 13. He says, better a poor but wise youth than an old but foolish king who no longer knows how to take a warning. And he goes on to talk about how this youth may have come from prison to the kingship, or he may have been born in poverty under his kingdom. But that youth, everybody saw how wise he was, and so therefore he was able to lead his people correctly. And so no, we're not talking about, the right of kings and how some people have the right to do things and not. He's just simply drawing a comparison here about, here's this government in foolishness as opposed to a government in wisdom, and how the government in foolishness is woe to the land, the government in wisdom is blessing to the land. But I want you to notice the last part of both of those, and that is whose princes feast in the morning, as opposed to verse number 17, of whose princes eat at a proper time. Okay? And so there's the key right there to me, and that is the princes are feasting in the morning. They're just in it for themselves, as opposed to the princes who are eating at a proper time. All right, now, going back to our questions here. Why is the land blessed and why is it cursed? Well, I don't think it matters as far as where the ruler comes from, or it matters of what they do, okay? And so, if you have leaders that are in wisdom, and if you have leaders that are actually trying to do their job and look out for the people, then that is something that the land is blessed Otherwise, you've got woe upon the land, all right? Okay, so here's the question I want us to focus in on. That is this. Do you feel our leaders sometimes are in it for themselves or for others? And does that affect our country? And I'm not meaning to be political or start any kind of political discussion here. So we can just kind of, frame this in ambiguous terms here. But do you sometimes feel our leaders, our politicians, are really kind of in it for themselves more so than they're in it for us? And at the same time, do you kind of feel like maybe that's some of the reason why we're in, the states that we are in? And I'm not really looking at the state that we're in of our current crisis, but other things, as far as massive spending, debt, rules that really don't apply to the majority of the people, but to just simply certain people. Foolish things that government does, foolish things that government has us do. Do you think that a lot of it comes from a point of view of they're in it for themselves? They're in it to get reelected.
Just have that power.
Yeah,
They like the power of it.
They want the power, and so they're going
The
to
name recognition.
they're going to promise people things in order to keep that position. Okay, all right. Ooh, nobody's wanting to jump in on that one. Now, I do say that not including this this crisis, because I do think that I'm sure that there are some people out there in government that are in it for themselves, but I do think that for the most part, the government is trying to get us over this hump, and they're trying to make decisions for the best of us, and that's why we need to pray that they'll continue to do that. Okay? All right. No comments on that? Okay. Well, we will continue on then to we do have a comment. All right. Okay, absolutely. This can apply to others, leaders like businesses and churches also. Ooh, Carol, way to go. Way to take, that's one thing about these proverbs is that, you can take them and you can apply them to so many different things because a proverb is just kind of, I've heard it talked about concentrated truth before. And wow, Carol, man, you have hit the nail right on the head with that one. You look at businesses and you're right. They're looking out for themselves. And, the point in case is where you've got a CEO that goes and runs his company into the ground, and then he's got a golden parachute to jump out with. That just infuriates so many people because it's not like he's doing it to be a good CEO. He's doing it for his own self. And church is also, you are absolutely correct. I think, and I'm certainly not wanting to go and cast stones at other people, being other people's judges. But I do think that there are so many times that church and church leaders, they're in it for themselves, right? I won't even go into the things that I've heard recently. But it seems like, even people in churches today are even trying to use this, when I talked about how most leaders are trying to get us over the hump, there's some people in churches today that are just trying to use this current situation to pad their own pockets and pad their own pews and make a name for themselves. And, all I can say for that is God will judge in those kind of situations.
Mary Ann commented right above that, which goes along with it, like maybe they're in it for the pay.
Okay. Yeah, they're in it for the pay and not to help the people. Absolutely. And that was part of, it's kind of interesting that Solomon gave that proverb because, what we looked at was Solomon's son Rehoboam that took over after Solomon, that the elders, the people came to Rehoboam and they said, basically loosen the load. Your father put on us a pretty heavy task. And he went to the advisors, his wise advisors, and said, if you will listen to people and do what they want, then they will love you forever. But then he went to his other younger advisors, the guys that he grew up with, the guys that he probably feasted in the morning with, exactly what this is talking about. And they said, no, don't do that. Double down, put on them an even greater weight. And let's really get more out of them. And then there was the revolt, and that was the split of the nation of Israel between the southern nation and the northern nation. So, all right, okay. Moving on then to verse number 18. In verse number 18, it says this: "If a man is lazy, the rafters sag. If his hands are idle, the house leaks." Okay. So let me see. It's a good thing it's not raining. I hope my house isn't going to leak. I don't think my rafters are sagging, but there's always something around here that needs to be done. Okay, that's the thing about that honeydew list, is that there's always a honeydew list. There's always something. Okay, not a honeydew list. It's just a to-do list, I should say.
If there's a honeydew list, that means I wrote it.
Yeah, you're right. Shannon is protesting here. I don't know if you heard that or not, but she's protesting here, saying, "Wait a minute! If it's a honeydew list, I wrote it."
It's a son-in-law list.
But that's not the case. I'm just talking about things to do around the house. When there's things to do around the house, there's always things to do around the house, right? Okay. And when you don't do them, then the house suffers to the point that the rafters start to sag, and then the roof starts to leak, because houses in those days, the roofs had to be, upkept more than what they are today. Okay. So looking at our question here in verse number 18. Okay, so verse number 18, "In this meaningless world, how often do tasks have to be repeated? What happens when they are left undone? And have you ever found yourself in this predicament?" That is something that, when we've talked, one of the things that Solomon talked about with life under the sun, and why it is such a vanity of vanities, why it is so meaningless, is that it's repetitive. There's nothing new under the sun. Everything repeats itself in cycles. Even this pandemic. Oh, this is new. That's new. No, I mean, we had a pandemic 100 years ago. We've had pandemics, throughout the course of humanity. I mean, it's new to us, but it's not new in and of itself. I mean, it may be a new virus to our immune systems, but the whole thing is not new necessarily. Okay? And so with this meaningless world, how often do tasks have to be repeated? What do you think? Somebody give me an all the time. I'm waiting for someone to say, I'm waiting for at least somebody to say all the time.
All the time.
Okay, there we go. In this repetitious world, you do have to do things all the time. It's like trash. I just took it out. How is it full again? I just took it out.
Making your
it's like, thank you, Gary, all the time. It's like dishes, Marianne. I just cleaned them. I just put them in the dishwasher, and it's that way again. Laundry. Oh, for crying out loud! You finally get all the laundry done, and lo and behold, you just put your dirty clothes in the laundry, and guess what happens? Well, it's it's there again, isn't it? Yes.
I just took Twix on a walk and she's crying again.
You just take the dog on a walk, and the dog wants to go for another walk. That's it. Okay. All right. So
dinner.
Cooking dinner. Absolutely. I think that we find ourselves in this predicament all the time. because the repetitiveness of life, and it's just, chores that need to be done over and over and over and over again. And if you're like me, a lot of times you just kind of feel like you're just sick of them. But the real question is, what happens if we don't do it? Well, a lazy man, the roof rafter's going to sag. If his hands are idle, the house leaks. We've got to do these things if we're going to maintain everything that's going on. And when we don't do it, then all of a sudden we've got a problem. It's like, okay, forget it. I'm not going to do laundry anymore. Well, how long is that going to work? And then you got a big problem, right? I'm not going to do any dishes. Okay, well, fine, but how are you going to? It's always going to catch up to you, and it's always going to be worse than if you would have just taken care of it right at the beginning. Okay, all right. So looking at verse number 19. Verse number 19. Okay, in verse number 19 it says this. Oh, we got a comment. Okay. Cutting the grass,
No,
absolutely. Oh, okay. Yeah, if you leave tasks undone for too long, it will create larger problems. And then we'll use grass as an example. It's a whole lot easier to mow your grass when it's just, a little bit long. When you wait until it's 6 inches too long and it's wet and matted up, then, it's like it takes you exponentially longer to mow the yard than it would be if you would have just got out there and done it. Okay? All right. And poor Olga, always talking about cutting grass. Hey, some people like cutting grass. I always tell Shannon, that life is better after the grass is mowed. For me, that's true.
I've never heard you say that.
Yeah. She says she's never heard me say that, and I say that all the time. Kinsey, have you ever heard me say that?
Life is better after the grass is mowed?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Thank
Okay.
you, Gallery. I've never
Twix.
heard it.
I guess I say it to Twix.
Maybe you're thinking it in your head.
I guess I say it to Twix, but I always think, life is always better after the grass is mowed. At least that's how I feel. Okay, moving on to verse number 19. All right, so verse number 19, it says this. A feast is made for laughter and wine makes life merry, but money is the answer for everything. Okay, and so how many things can be enabled in this life with money? Does this show money's importance? Does this mean that money should be the most important thing to all of us? I mean, I really stop and think about this, okay? And that is, what he's saying here is that a feast is made for laughter. And so, you have a dinner party, you invite a bunch of friends over. Not now. But you do that, it's a feast is made for laughter. We'll have a church picnic after all this is over. And, we'll have a feast with laughter. And wine makes life merry. We won't have wine at our church picnic. We're going to have, sodas and stuff. All right. This, by the way, just like what we've talked about other places in the book of Ecclesiastes, this does not give anybody an excuse to go out and get drunk. That's not what this is talking about. But the real point is this. Money is the answer for everything. And so, like feasting, answer for laughter, wine, answer for merriment, then answer is money is going to be an answer for everything. And, if you think about it, it seems like in our society today, that's just kind of what we have a feeling about is, if we have a problem, what do? We throw money at it, right? And as long as we are throwing enough money at it, then we are going to assume that the problem is taken care of. Now, is that a lot of the time the case? Well, a lot of times that is true. I mean, if you've got a problem, money is going to be somewhat of a solution to it. If your car is broken down, it needs to be fixed. Okay, great. What is that going to entail? Money, right? You've got a problem in society today. We've got a problem with with the virus. Okay, so how and what is going to fix a lot of the problems, or at least what is going to enable a fix to a problem? Well, it's going to cost things, right? And so we've got that, but at the same time, does that mean that money is going to fix everything? No, there's a lot of things that money will not fix. Money will not fix things as spiritual problems. As a matter of fact, money can make spiritual problems even worse. And so, even though money is an important thing in life under the sun, we need to always remember that it is important to a point, right? And that it is not the ultimate importance. What is the ultimate importance is God. Okay? All right. So that is the end of page number 33. I thought that we would hopefully get done with our lesson tonight, but we've actually got another page, page 34. And so what we're going to do is we are going to pick up with page number 34 next week, which is Ecclesiastes chapter 10 in verse number 20. Make sure that, we'll just pick up there. So we'll pick up with that verse. We'll finish up these Proverbs, and then hopefully we're going to go on into the next lesson, lesson number 11, which happens to be lesson number 11 too, or chapter 11, lesson number 11. Okay? All right. Well, if nobody else has any last-minute comments about this, I'm not seeing anything. I'd like to thank you for joining us tonight, and if you are joining us for the first time tonight, or if you're watching this on a repeat broadcast, go back and take a look at our other ones. We've been looking at the book of Proverbs for many weeks. I do that, especially when we're talking about Proverbs. We've been looking at the book of Ecclesiastes for many weeks now in our Tuesday night Bible studies at Friends in Faith. But, with all of this, we've had to do the last, what is this, about the third one? Fourth one? Something like that. We've had to do it on Facebook. And so, you can't go back and, well, actually you can. You can go back and you can look at the other ones on Facebook, the other lessons. And if you really want to, take part of this lesson, if you want to look at all the other things that we did, let me know. We've got this lesson material that I have been putting up on the board right here. I've got that for you. I don't mind sending you a copy of it if you will let me know. And at the same time, if you want to go back, if you want to look at other things, we put a lot of those on YouTube, but it's a private link, and so I'd have to share that with you. But if you want it, I don't think anybody would have a problem with sharing that. Okay? All right. Well, thank you for being with us tonight, and hope that you stay safe, and the Lord is keeping you well and safe during the time that we have left being in confinement. And please join us again next Tuesday at 7 o'clock. All right? Okay. See you then. God bless.